Ben checked his bank app for the third time that morning. $47. That's all that stood between him and total financial collapse. Not, I need a vacation broke. Not, maybe I'll skip coffee this week broke. Real broke. The kind where you calculate gas money before you even leave the house. But here's the part nobody tells you. 2 years later, that same man would have zero debt, a fully funded emergency fund, and money quietly growing in investments every single month. No lottery ticket, no inheritance, no overnight miracle, just 5 decisions. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what they were, because chances are you're standing in the exact same spot Ben was standing in. Let's go back to the beginning, because what happened to Ben is happening to thousands of people right now, today, in this exact moment, and most of them don't even realize it yet. They think their situation is unique. It isn't. The patterns are almost always identical, and so are the solutions, once you actually see them clearly. Ben was 26 years old. He had a job, a decent one even, enough to pay rent, keep the lights on, and just barely survive the month. But surviving was the trap. He wasn't building anything. He was just treading water, month after month, year after year. Every payday felt identical. Money landed in his account on Friday, and by the following Wednesday, it was already gone. Rent, car payment, phone bill, credit card minimum, groceries, gas. By the time he covered everything that mattered, there was nothing left for anything else. No savings, no buffer, no breathing room. He told himself it was temporary. Once I get that raise, once this debt is gone, once things settle down. But things never settled down. There was always something, a flat tire, a surprise bill, a small loan from a friend that needed paying back with interest he never asked for. The emergencies weren't even that big. They just kept hitting a system that had zero room for error. And here's the part that really messes with you. It wasn't even about the money. It was what the money was doing to his head. Lying awake, running numbers that never worked out. Avoiding his banking app some mornings because he already knew what he'd see. Saying no to dinners with friends, weekend trips, even small joys. Not because he didn't want to go, but because he couldn't stomach the embarrassment of admitting he couldn't afford it. Ben wasn't lazy. He wasn't reckless. He was doing exactly what most people do, reacting to money instead of directing it. Spending whatever was left after bills, instead of deciding in advance where every single dollar would go. And reacting always loses to planning. Always. Then came the moment that changed everything. And it wasn't dramatic. There was no big crisis, no rock-bottom moment you'd see in a movie. It was an overdraft notification for $3. He'd gone $3 below zero, and the bank charged him a $35 fee for the privilege. Ben stared at that notification for a long time. Not because the amount was massive, it wasn't, but because of what it represented. He had absolutely no idea where his money actually went. He earned a real income. He wasn't blowing it on anything crazy. And yet here he was penalized over $3 because his system, or complete lack of one, had failed him in the smallest, most preventable way possible. That night, he asked himself one brutally honest question. If nothing changes, where am I in 5 years? And the answer scared him more than that $35 fee ever could. He pictured himself at 31, still checking his account 3 times a day, still dreading every payday instead of looking forward to it, still one flat tire away from disaster. That image, not some inspirational quote, not some finance guru's video, was what actually moved him. He didn't have a financial advisor. He didn't have extra money to throw at the problem. What he had was a notebook, a calculator app, and a level of frustration finally strong enough to outweigh his fear of facing the numbers head on. So here's where it gets interesting, because what Ben did next wasn't complicated. It wasn't some secret financial strategy reserved for the wealthy. It was 5 simple shifts applied consistently that completely rewired his relationship with money. The first thing he changed was the order of operations. Instead of saving whatever happened to be left at the end of the month, which was usually nothing, he flipped the entire sequence. The moment his paycheck landed, a fixed percentage moved straight into savings automatically, before he could touch it, before he could talk himself out of it. Even if the amount felt small. even if it felt like it barely mattered. The goal was never the size of the number. The goal was making saving non-negotiable instead of optional. This single shift is called paying yourself first, and it's the foundation everything else was built on. The second thing he adopted was the zero-based budget. Every single dollar got assigned a job before the month even started. Rent, bills, groceries, savings, even guilt-free fun money. Nothing sat unassigned, because unassigned money is exactly the kind of money that quietly vanishes without you ever noticing where it went. For the first time in his life, Ben could glance at a number and know, with total certainty, whether he could afford something, instead of guessing and hoping he'd be fine. The third move was building an emergency fund before anything else, before extra debt payments, before investing, before any of it. Just enough to cover a real, unexpected expense without sliding into debt over it. This wasn't about getting rich. This was about making sure a $3 mistake never turned into a $35 disaster again. The fourth shift was tracking every single expense brutally and honestly. Not to shame himself, to see the truth clearly. He found subscriptions he'd completely forgotten he was paying for. He noticed spending patterns tied to stress and boredom, not actual need. Small leaks that, added up over a month, were bigger than he ever imagined possible. And the fifth move was attacking debt with an actual plan instead of panic. He listed every single debt from smallest to largest and started knocking them out one at a time, throwing every spare dollar at the smallest balance first, while keeping minimum payments on the rest. Each payoff wasn't just a number disappearing from screen. It was proof. Proof the system worked. Proof he wasn't stuck. None of these 5 ideas required a finance degree. None of them needed some secret only the wealthy knew about. What changed wasn't Ben's intelligence. It was his consistency. 6 months in, Ben hit his first real milestone, a fully funded emergency fund. And the test came almost immediately. His car needed a repair that, a year earlier, would have completely wrecked him financially. This time, he paid it without a second thought and moved on with his week like it was nothing. That moment hit different, not because of the dollar amount, but because of what it proved. The system worked. He could finally trust it. From there, momentum took over completely. He paid off his smallest debt, then the next one, then the next. He started putting a portion of every single paycheck into long-term investing. Nothing flashy, nothing complicated, just consistent contributions to a simple, diversified portfolio. He wasn't chasing overnight riches. He was making sure he never felt that $47 panic again. 2 years after that overdraft notification, Ben's life looked completely different. Not because he won the lottery, not because of some massive career jump. He still had essentially the same job. What changed was his entire relationship with money. He had savings that could cover months of expenses, not days. Zero high-interest debt hanging over his head. Investments quietly compounding in the background, growing whether he thought about them or not. And most importantly, he had peace. The kind of peace that only comes from knowing, with absolute certainty, that your money is working for you instead of silently working against you. He still remembered the exact feeling of that $47 morning, the tightness in his chest, the way his hand hesitated before opening the banking app. Now, opening that same app felt completely different. Boring, almost. Numbers that made sense. No surprises waiting to ambush him. That shift from dread to boredom is honestly the real definition of financial freedom. Not yachts, not private jets, just the absence of fear every time he checked his balance. His friends started noticing too, not because he was suddenly flashing money around, but because he'd stopped flinching every time the check came at dinner. He said yes to things again. Trips, gifts, spontaneous plans. Not recklessly, intentionally, because his budget actually had room for joy now instead of just survival. Ben never became a millionaire overnight. He didn't need to. Financial freedom, for him, was never about hitting some specific number. It was the ability to handle life's surprises without falling apart. It was the simple, quiet relief of no longer dreading his own banking app. And here's the truth that matters most. Ben's story isn't rare. It isn't even special. The 5 principles that completely turned his finances around. paying himself first, budgeting every single dollar, building an emergency fund, tracking spending with total honesty, and attacking debt with an actual plan. None of those are secrets. They're sitting right in front of anyone willing to actually use them. The only real difference between where Ben started and where he ended up was the decision to start. So here's the question you need to answer right now. Today, not tomorrow. Which part of Ben's story are you currently living in? Are you still at the $47 moment, hoping things magically settle down on their own? Or have you already started building the system that gets you out? If this hit home for you, you already know exactly which principle you need to start with first. Drop it in the comments. And if you want more stories like this one, make sure you're subscribed because the next story might be exactly the wake-up call you need.